All right, now we're on. Okay, Rowena, Teddy, would like you to tell us some about your childhood and how you and Bob met and kind of what that journey was, and then lead into your work in Pakistan.
That's kind of a big order.
I know. You just touch on whichever parts you think would make it interesting when we write the book.
I don't really know.
Okay. You want us to ask you questions?
Oh.
You want us just to ask you questions? Would that be easier?
Well, perhaps it would.
Okay.
I'd probably get off. I was born in Indiana, a small town, Logansport, and had an older and younger brother. Lived in the city until the '29 Depression. My father owned a music store, and no one bought pianos and musical instruments during the Depression. So we bought a little 30-acre farm. Either my parents had farmed, my mother farmed, and my dad picked up some odd things, which he did, and had just a little corner store with clarinet reeds and sheet music. So we managed well during the Depression. And then I went to country school, and my father was killed when I was 13 in an automobile accident. So we moved back into the huge metropolis of Logansport, 18,000 people.
Logansport? Is that what it's called?
Pardon?
Logansport? Logansport.
Yeah.
When were you born?
Pardon?
What's your birth date?
June 17th, 21.
It's June 17th, 21. Okay.
And then I went to college for a year and prepared for, did pre-science, went in nurses training because it was, I had a scholarship and it was the least expensive. I'm not sure that's the route I should have gone, but I did, and graduated from Indiana Medical Center, School for Nursing, and worked for a year in obstetrics. And it was during that year I met my husband. My mother, meantime, moved to Lafayette, Indiana, West Lafayette, so that we three children could go through Purdue. But I didn't, and my brothers both left for the war because it was during the Second World War. So she sat there with a huge rooming house, no children.
Oh, no.
A week later, I finished nurses training and met Bob going home for a weekend at Purdue. He was just ready to get his doctorate in chemistry. And we met at an InterVarsity Christian Fellowship party. And it was love at first sight, I guess. Anyway, we had a short summer romance and were married within that year. I had already made arrangements to wind up my job in nursing and go to New York City and get a degree in nursing administration from Columbia, and was a dormitory nurse at Barnard College. But I only stayed one term because I had met Bob that summer and left. We were married in 1945 and stayed on at Purdue for a little bit. He did research. He worked on the, actually worked on the Manhattan Project during the war, which is why he wasn't drafted. And then he felt he wanted to teach. He had looked at industrial jobs, but he really wanted to go into teaching. So we accepted a job at the University of Maine and moved to Maine. We were there 3 years, and he enjoyed it very much. We worked with students and so forth and bought our own home, had our first 2 children and 2 boys. Well, actually the second boy was twins, and that was a very significant event in our lives because we lost one of the babies. It was our first experience with death. And so we became acquainted with some missionaries to the Penobscot Indians, and they invited us to a missionary conference, and having just lost a baby, and it was a very deepening, searching time for us spiritually. We attended this conference, had a baby in arms, and because the second baby was still very small, and then this missionary conference, we heard of China Inland Missions, Sudan Interior, and so forth. It was our first exposure to missions. I was brought up Lutheran, and I was brought up Methodist, and we really had much contact with missionaries in the mission field. And we were Christians, and tithed and worked with student groups and so forth, but we never thought of mission work. And then we were very challenged at that conference, but we never thought it would include us, because what would a chemist do on the mission field? It wasn't exactly appropriate. But we began to pray because we were very impressed about the fact that God has a very definite call for us. We thought we just did sort of what we wanted to do. We haven't really stopped and prayed about it. And so we did. We began to pray every day that should we stay at the University of Maine, or should we transfer, or what should we do? But we never thought of the mission field. And then we had very dear friends from my days in nurses training. I had actually introduced them in the delivery room. Neither one of them had seen the delivery, and he was a med student and she was a nurse, and I called them. They met behind masks in the delivery room. They were very significant in our lives, and they wrote to us at the University of Maine because they knew we were praying about what we were going to do, and they were very keen on mission, looking at it themselves. And they said, "Say, did you see this notice in his magazine, University Magazine, about the need for a chemistry professor at Gordon College in Rawalpindi, West Pakistan?" And I had read the magazine, and we put it back in the shed, not noticed anything, and I went and got it, and sure enough, there it was. And so when Bob came home that night, I showed it to him, and we thought, well, we've prayed about it all this time, and we can't just dismiss it. So we wrote to Dr. Cummings, who had put the ad in. Actually, it was an uncle to James Cummings here, Marilyn's husband.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
And he had come home and needed this chemistry professor desperately in Pakistan. And he said to one of the staff workers, "How do you find somebody that's got a degree and would be willing to go?" And she said, "Well, why don't you put an ad in his magazine?" So he wrote to us in Maine, and we had a lot of questions at first, and we were very ignorant. We had no idea. And I had to look on a map and see where the place was. And this happened along in February or March. And by September, we were in Pakistan. And no orientation, no training. And we went with 2 little boys.
How old were they at the time?
The older was under 3, and the second one was 17 months or something. I've forgotten exactly. A little over a year, and not walking yet. I know. I carried the playpen. So we didn't. It was really quite a cultural change for us. And we went by boat with the Cummings and another young couple, a freighter called the Borneo. It was a 30-day trip, and we had to watch the children all the time because it wasn't childproof. It was not made for passengers, but this is what we went on. And we arrived in Karachi, and they put us in the YMCA, and the other families were designated to some other home or place. And I was in the pool room of the YMCA those first nights. So we pushed 2 easy chairs that were down there in the pool room together. They put cots in for us, and there were no Westerners. It was all Pakistanis. No one spoke English. In the bathroom, you could see out. Had a chick, one of these reed things hanging. And I thought everybody could see into, so we didn't spend much time in the bathroom. Actually, I guess you can see out, but they can't see. And I put Bill in these 2 easy chairs pushed together, and cried out in the night, so I took him in bed with me, and the next morning he was covered with bed bug bites. And so when we went up country, I arrived in Rawalpindi, 36 hours over the desert, train trip, with my baby covered with bed bug bites. And Bob Jr. had a lazy eye, and he had spectacles on, and not yet 3, so we were quite a decrepit family when we arrived. And we had planned to stay for a short term of 4 or 5 years, and we stayed 36.
Oh my heavens!
And so that was the beginning of our experience in Pakistan. Here we've had a very rich and wonderful life. We taught at that college for 18 years, Bob did, and had 2 more children. And then we were asked, and then we had that's when 5 years later, so we have 5 children. And we stayed 5 years before we came back to America. We came for a furlough after 5 years. And then we had a furlough every 5 years. Later it was 3 years when our children got this side. And after 18 years, they asked Bob, who by then was vice president of college and headed the leprosy hospital and ran the mission girls school and boys school, or kept the accounts and so forth, and served on 17 committees. So, because in Pakistan you do everything. But we had wonderful fellowship and mission family, and it was a big adjustment, very different way of life, no doubt, but rich fellowship, and we felt very rewarded in what we did. So then they asked Bob to go to Lahore, which was a cultural capital about 200 miles away, as the president of Foreman College, because the Pakistani man they had was beyond retirement and needed to find a replacement. So we decided that we would agree to that and go, and people in Gordon were pretty upset with us. They felt we laid down our cross because we were a little 15-acre frontier college, and did a lot training Christian students, whereas Foreman was a little city of 120 acres and a sewage system and housing for Christians and Muslims, and 6 big dormitories on the British fashion, so very different place. So we went to Foreman. So that was a very good move for us because we were stretched in new and different directions. But it didn't last long because the government was already in process of taking over the colleges and the schools. So 4 years after we arrived there, the government took over the college. So my husband immediately stepped down and brought in a Christian Pakistani from the World Council of Churches to take over, so that when we lost the school, we'd have a Christian as the president. And so that period lasted for 30 years with the government controlling the schools. And then my husband was put in charge of our mission. And we came back to the States from time to time on furloughs. So is that enough of the background?
Yeah, tell me your children and when they were born, their names.
We had 3 boys. They were born 46, 48, and 50. And daughters were born 52 and 57.
Okay, so who was born in 46?
Bob Jr., who has just put his money on a house here. We'll be moving down here eventually.
Yay! That's awesome.
He's not retired yet. They come from Connecticut.
Oh. So he lives in Connecticut right now?
Now forged his way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, 48. Who's that?
And Bill. He's been superintendent of schools in Northern Michigan. Bill William Joseph.
Okay, and 50?
And, then Jim is the president now of Foreman College.
Oh, that's right.
And James Allen,
Okay.
And then Ann Elizabeth is the one that went on the trip with me.
Okay.
And she and her oldest son is now an Anglican priest.
Mm.
And he and his wife are leaving for Pakistan on the 11th of this month.
Wow.
He'll be teaching in an Anglican seminary in Lahore. So,
and how long will, I mean, like for years or just on a trip?
they'll be there for 2 months this time.
Mm-hmm.
And he has visited before.
Mm-hmm.
But he has, and then he wants to go for a doctorate.
Mm-hmm.
And if he gets full ride for his doctorate, he'll go to grad school in September.
Mm-hmm.
But if he doesn't, then he'll be looking at teaching or something. But he would like to get his doctorate. He's very bright. And I don't know where he got the Anglican root, but very committed Christian.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
And then 57. Who was born in 57?
Margaret. She's my youngest. She'll be coming next week. Mm-hmm.
Okay, where does she live?
She's in Michigan. Nan is in Colorado Springs.
Colorado, okay.
Uh-huh.
Now, which one of the children was a twin?
Bill.
Okay, the second one.
Second one. Yeah. We had the 2 boys born in Maine.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill was an unexpected premature twin, and lungs didn't develop then. So they kept him in the hospital for a month and didn't know if he'd make it or not.
Bill was?
Uh-huh. And
Did you learn the language? Did you learn Pakistani?
yeah.
You did?
Uh-huh. We did, we had a 5-year course. So our first year was mainly language for me. I'm not a linguist, so I really worked hard at that. I'm a plotter. And I had a baby. Jim was born 10 months after we arrived, and studied language. My husband studied language, but he also taught full time because he's got one of those minds that can manage that. Plus a family. And so, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, so I did the 5-year course. I was never as fluent as I would like to have been, mainly because I'm not good in language. And secondly, we were in English-speaking situations, being in higher academics in colleges. And I'd been thrown in a village, but I had it, so I was very fluent.
You didn't need to use it.
The women and servants and so forth, you know. Yeah.
Got it.
Now, did you have brothers and sisters?
I had 2 brothers, an older brother and a younger brother.
Okay. And are they still living?
One is in a nursing home in Worcester, Ohio.
Okay. Which one's still living?
Joe, the younger.
The younger. What were your parents' names?
What were?
What are your parents' names?
Francis and Janetta. Francis, Janetta, Jameson, Joseph, and Joseph Arthur. We called them Art and Janetta Jameson.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
My maiden name is Jameson.
Oh, Jameson.
I call my walker Jamie's Jungle. Nickname from Jameson.
And were your parents Christians?
We went to we went to a Methodist church. My mother, probably more so than my father, during the Depression, when things were really hard. He got away from the church, and actually I got into, I don't know if it was going to be an alcohol problem or not, but began to go that direction during the Depression. My mother was very good churchwoman and faithful, not terribly committed and active, but she was very supportive of us and our mission service and so forth. And she had a stroke when she came and visited us and wrote a book actually about her trip. And then she had a stroke when she was 67, young, and was debilitated. But